in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome. My name is Lisa Hernandez. I am with CDSS. I will be the moderator of today's webinar. Our topic for today is the CalFresh Outreach Toolkit. I'm going to go over a few logistics before we get started. Our webinar will be approximately 1 hour. This webinar will be held in listen-only mode. You may connect your audio in one of two ways, either over the telephone or through your computer. You should see this option under Audio on the webinar control panel. Please be aware that if you wish to speak and ask questions during the webinar, you must connect with a USB mic and headset or by the phone. Connecting with only headphones will not allow you to speak and ask questions. If you do not have a USB mic, you must connect by phone in order to listen and ask questions during the webinar. Keep in mind that if you are connected by phone and choose to connect via mic and speakers, you will be automatically disconnected from the telephone line. If you would like to ask a question, please type your question into the questions dialog box and press send. Questions submitted via the question box will be either answered back to you electronically or the moderator will ask the presenter your question. At the end of the presentation, we will have an open question and answer time to ask your questions by phone or headset. To ask a question during this open session, please select the hand button, which is on the little sidebar to the left of the control panel. Please take a moment right now to locate the hand button, and if you found it, please click the hand. Great. Now when you have raised your hand to ask a question during the question and answer time, I will unmute your line and you will be asked to present your question. You can all put your hands down now. This webinar will be recorded. If you are not comfortable with having your voice recorded, you may opt to enter your question through the question function and it will remain anonymous. At the end of the webinar, we will have a short evaluation survey. Please take a moment to complete it. Your feedback is very important to us in improving future webinars. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Maria Leach, our presenter today. Maria is an employee with the Public Health Institute and has been part of the CalFresh program access team for the past 3 years. She co-led the development of the toolkit that we will review today. Thank you, Maria.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here today. And before we begin, I'm going to ask you to take a quick poll. Do you have a toolkit? Poll is open. If you would please check whether you have a toolkit, yes or no, in front of you. If we close the poll, then we'll see how many people have their toolkit. And it looks like most of you do have your toolkit with you, which is great news. If you do not, you can access a copy of the toolkit at www.cdss.ca.gov /CalFresh, all lowercase, CalFresh Outreach / and then click on the Toolkit bar. If you are a CalFresh Outreach tool or subcontractor, please contact your Prime agency for a copy. Prime should give this information to their CDSS program analyst because we are maintaining a list of people interested in getting hard copies of the toolkit to see what options we may have. You can also, as I said, access the toolkit online. If you are a county agency, we are looking into future options of having hard copy toolkits available for purchase. So welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Maria Leach and I am a CalFresh Outreach Specialist with the Public Health Institute and I'm assigned to the California Department of Social Services. My co-presenters and developers of today's webinar are Karen Rizel, Christina Costa, Detta Hunt, Jeff Lassiter, Tony Wynn, and Lisa Hernandez. Our goal today is to introduce you to the CalFresh Outreach Toolkit. There will be some limited interaction during this webinar, but be alert and ready to figuratively raise your hands or take a poll when the time comes. We know that your time is limited, so we don't want to delay too long. We ask that you type any questions into the question box, and I will interrupt the webinar periodically and answer one or two of those questions. Any questions that are not answered during these question times, we will address at the end or in writing after the webinar. The webinar will take approximately 45 minutes, and it will also be available online at the cdss.ca.gov CalFresh Outreach website. Based on the registration survey that we had you complete when you registered for this webinar, it looks like we have about one state agency represented, indicating about 3% of our participants today. We have about 2% from our counties, 6% from prime contractors, 73% from subcontractors, 16% other. What's exciting is that 91% of you do one-to-one outreach. And about 36% have been in the outreach business for just less than a year, 64% for more than 1 year, and 16% in fact have been doing this work for 5+ years. And we have a handful of people, about 8%, who actually assisted us when we were writing and developing this toolkit. And we really do want to repeat our gratitude to you for that help. So let's get drum roll, please. You got a surprise package in the mail, and your immediate thought was, yay, now I have something to read. Well, that's probably not the case. Some questions that might have come to mind are, what is this? Why me? What does this include? Do I have to use it? I've been doing this work for a very long time. How will it help? And will I have to do more training? If we missed one of your questions, please type your question in the box and hit send. So let's begin with the question, what is this? We think of the toolkit as a one-stop shop where an outreach person can go to find outreach strategies that have been tried and tested by veterans in the field. We have worked with an advisory group of more than 40 individuals representing 3 state agencies and multiple community-based organizations and advocates. You will find detailed information about the CalFresh application process, along with information about procedures for pre-screening, assisting a candidate with an application, and of course following up with recipients to ensure that they maintain their benefits if they are eligible. It is a place where you can go for training materials to use in the community and with your agency staff to bring them up to speed on CalFresh. Some materials for you to distribute at community events are available, and there is lots of material that you can add to any training you might be putting together about CalFresh Outreach or the CalFresh program. Yes, there's lots of learning involved, but for most of you, it will expand what you know already, and once you're familiar with the toolkit, you will be able to quickly locate what you need. And particularly if you have new staff on board, this toolkit is for them. One of the most important aspects of the toolkit is that CDSS has approved all of the content that is in here, so you really are free to use this information. The toolkit does not include an exhaustive list of regulations, but it does address the ones that we know you will use most often when doing CalFresh outreach. You will help eligible applicants get on board and stay on board CalFresh. So we have a quick poll coming up, and it's a Why Me poll. Are you, and I think Tony will launch the poll now. There are millions of people in California and only 300 toolkits currently in print. So why were you selected to receive one? Let's take a poll and then you check all that apply. Are you a VIP CalFresh outreach staff person, manager, or volunteer? Are you working in the community? Are you likely to meet someone in need of CalFresh? Are you the go-to person for CalFresh information in your agency, local area, or local media? Are you on the front line in the CalFresh outreach effort? The poll is still open, and then Tony will read the result. We want you to be well equipped to confidently and accurately answer questions for applicants, community members, staff at your agency, and staff at partner agencies. If you do not know the answer to a question, then we want you to know where you can go to get that answer. We also want you to have approved talking points when you speak to the media. The information we have included is referenced and reliable and ready for you to use during your conversations. In California, many of you know about half of individuals eligible for the program are participating. So informed outreach is really necessary. We want to have consistent CalFresh outreach program throughout California, making sure that all those doing outreach have at least the same core information that they are presenting. We really want to cut back on any confusion. So let's explore your packet. You should have a carry case with dividers and tear pads, a binder with tabs, handbook chapters, appendices, tip sheets, regulation quick reference sheets laminated, consumer flyer images, worksheets, forms, extra tear pads, the award-winning video, and a resource CD/USB with all of these materials available electronically. Your agency will already have received table covers, one with the CalFresh logo in English and the other in Spanish, and some outreach materials like brochures in English, Spanish, Hmong, and Chinese, bookmarks, inserts, and posters. These were sent in advance because they were approved considerably in advance. Please again remember to write any questions as they come up in the question box and hit send. So let's take a look. I want you to look for things in the toolkit binder. So raise your hand when you find Chapter 5, California Eligibility Guidelines specific to older adults. And again, raise your hand when you find the tab for the Handbook General Market. I'm seeing some hands go up. Okay. You'll notice that the binder tab in your binder is slightly different from what you're seeing on the screen. The reason being that we were making refinements to this toolkit right up to the last minute, and we think the one you have is an improvement over what's here. So what are these materials? Some regulations have been translated from legal terminology to standard English. Source documents are cited throughout, and web links are provided. And a note about the links. They were active on the electronic version at the time this was sent to print, but some may have become inactive since first added to the handbooks. If you find an inactive link, simply cut and paste the keywords from the link into your browser, and the correct document should show up. We certainly hope so. You'll also notice that we do repeat ourselves. Some handbook chapters have the same information as others, and the reason for this is to allow each chapter to stand alone and each handbook to stand alone. I'd like you to take a look at your case. This is not available on the internet, so if you have it, just take a look at it, open it up, and what you will see, it's transparent to allow you to quickly see the contents. There are tabs in here for various materials. There are tear pads to help you make use of the material and then easily return them to the case after an encounter with a client or after a community event. We don't really have to shuffle paper because the tear pads will help us keep track of things. There's a divider to allow you to add brochures or other materials at the back of the case should you need to use them. So now we have another poll for you, and the question is, do you work 100% in the CalFresh outreach effort? And that's going to be a yes or no. Okay, so many of you do and many of you don't. And that was part of our reason for having this case. The carry case is an optional item. You can use it when you go to the field or simply take out the contents and the tabs and organize your desk drawer. We know that outreach takes place in a variety of locations, and some of you are indeed at your desks when you do it. But others of you do go into the field, and we like to think this case allows it to be the material to be very portable. It is carefully designed to fit in a roller bag or crate that you may already use as part of your outreach work. And you can refill the carry case with the extra materials provided every day or every week, depending on how quickly you move through your supply. As a CalFresh outreach person, you definitely need to be prepared. And this is our attempt to help you be prepared. Let's take a look at our elegant cover. Raise your hands if you like it. Does anyone know why we have fruits and veggies on all of our materials? You can type your suggestions and hit send. While CalFresh Outreach cannot conduct SNAP-Ed, we do want to get the message across that CalFresh is a tool to buy better food for better living. So once you open the binder, you will come to the introduction. And the introduction pretty much covers what I've shared with you so far, but please do take some time to read it. The next thing I want you to be aware of are the tabs. The tabs separate sections of the binder, so please go to the binder right now and see if you locate the General Market Handbook tab, the Appendices for the General Market, Handbook for Older Adults, Appendices for Older Adults, the Tip Sheets, Regulation Quick Reference Sheets, Consumer Flyers, Worksheets, and Forms. So when you have found all of the tabs, please raise your hand so we can see what's happening out there. We hope you're following along with us, and those of you who don't have a toolkit, you will recognize these images when you do get yours. Okay, looks like lots of hands. So the General Market Handbook, I want you to take a look at that. Note that there are 6 chapters and lots of subheadings. Take a moment and then raise your hand when you find the chapter in the Handbook General Market that you would use if you wanted ideas about places to conduct outreach. So raise your hand when you find the chapter in the handbook that you would use if you wanted ideas about places to conduct outreach. Terrific. Looks like people are finding it. And yes, you would go to Chapter 3, page 12 of the General Market Handbook. Go to that chapter right now, if you would, and look at the headings. Do any of the places listed here surprise you? And if they do, just shoot us a message. Any of the places that are listed in this chapter surprise you as places you might not have thought of to find CalFresh candidates? A new outreach worker might not think of all of these places right away, but here they can get some ideas, and not only ideas, but the background of each entity listed, and some strategies that other people have found useful when approaching or contacting them. Working in community health, we know that people are extremely busy, and it's very difficult to get our agenda on the radar. I'm going to stop now and take a few questions, if there are any.
Hello, Maria. We do not have any questions at the moment, but we do have a lot of great responses and comments regarding the cover of the toolkit. So great job on that. But at the moment, I do not have any questions.
Would you like to share with us some of the comments you're seeing about the cover?
Yes, they say that the cover is to promote healthy eating. Another individual said that it's encouraging to eat healthier. It's vibrant and full of life. And also that fruits and
Terrific.
veggies are great if they are seasonal, as they are low cost when seasonal.
Terrific. So we're getting the point across. We're not doing snap ed, but hey, we're certainly sharing a message. So thank you for those very insightful comments. Let's take a look at the general market appendices now, if you would, with me. The appendices are perhaps more than you ever wanted to know, but let's say you were going to meet some parents at a PTA meeting and you wanted to brush up on your CalFresh myth and facts to share during your conversation or presentation. So can you look at the appendix, the index to the appendices for the general market handbook, and let me know when you find the myth and fact sheet. Terrific. Just give you another minute to look for that, and you find it in the index, myth and facts. And hopefully you have found it as Appendix F8, Myth and Facts about CalFresh, on page 46. And as you scan to page 46, take a quick scan over what else you come across. There's extensive myth and facts and Q&As, etc. So now I want you to do a little exercise with me. I want you to imagine that you have a client that needs assistance from the CalFresh office in Butte County. So again, look at your appendix index, go to CDSS Providers, and raise your hand when you find the CalFresh coordinator in Butte County. I see some hands going up. Terrific. You would go to Appendix A3, page 9 of the Appendices General Market, and on the 4th row you'll find the Butte County contact person. Browse through these appendices. We're not going to take your time to do that today, but look through all of them and when you have time, and you'll find a wealth of information to help you in your work. The appendices are a compendium of information. You'll find CalFresh Q&A in English and Spanish, which are great for radio or TV interviews if you're called on. There's contact information for all of the prime agencies conducting outreach. And if you go to page 43, you'll even find a sample press release. And this would allow you to develop a press release if you have something happening in your area and you need to get very specific about it. So it looks like, Detta, we may have a question. I think the question is, do we have the toolkit materials available in Spanish? And what I'm going to do is hold that question for a little while, because there's one section that is. As I mentioned, the Q&A for the media is in English and Spanish. And also you'll find that the consumer flyers are. The rest are not, at this point, translated to Spanish. Now I'd like you to take a look at the older adult handbook. This one has a slightly different setup. There are 10 chapters, and they're shorter than in the general market handbook. So now I have a question for you. Where would you go in the handbook for older adults to understand the eligibility guidelines and the face-to-face interview waiver? So where would you go? You're in the handbook for older adults now, and there's a little hint because we looked at this chapter earlier, and you want to understand the eligibility guidelines and the face-to-face interview waiver. So raise your hand when you find that paragraph. Very cool. Yes, you would go to Chapter 5, page 14. And we have more appendices, and these are specific to the older adult population. An issue that comes up often for older adults is the issue of Social Security. There are many types of benefits coming through the Social Security office, and it can be very confusing. So here we go. Where would you find everything you need to know about what we call the S's? And take a look at the index for the older adult appendices first, and raise your hand when you've located it. Very good. You would go to Appendix G, page 28. These appendices for the older adults include myths and facts specific to that population of concern, talking points, and resources that are specific to that population. So it's really a very complete array of stuff. The next tab you have are tip sheets, and we've narrowed this to 2. So you may ask, why would you need a tip sheet on compassionate interviewing? Well, because sometimes we need gentle reminders. Read this every so often as a reminder of best practices. Read it especially when you're having a tough day. When we get stressed, it's easy to forget the basic principles of active listening and having a listener orientation with our clients. Often we have lots and lots of stuff to do, and it's really difficult to slow down to do the listening that we need to do to get a good understanding of what's going on. The next tip sheet is the pre-screening tip sheet, and it is because although pre-screening is simple, why do we need a flow chart? The long version you will see as tip sheet B. The pre-screening is a seemingly basic process, but not so basic for someone beginning outreach. Until you are completely familiar with the pre-screening worksheet, we will see that in a later section. Use this guide to help you cover all of the basic information. After a while, you will not need it, but in the beginning, it will save you lots of time. And I just want to again say how much we appreciate our advisory committee for helping us get into the details here. Let's take a look at the next tab, which has your regulation quick reference sheets. There's an index, and the regulation quick reference sheets are laminated as desk aids. You can remove them from your binder, put them on a ring, and keep them on hand. The CalFresh regulations that seemed most confusing to outreach workers and others were identified by our advisors and included here. They are very technical and may not be necessary for a beginning outreach worker. People needing an in-depth knowledge of the application determination process will find them handy to have on their desks. If you read through them repeatedly, you will become very familiar with the information. So let's take a quick look at the homeless example for regulation quick reference sheets. What do people who are without a home have in common? So you'll see that listed under the characteristics of a homeless individual. In general, they lack a mailing address, and they lack transportation. The relevant regulation discusses this issue in some detail here to make sure that these households can apply for CalFresh. How the regulation gets applied by the CDSS worker is detailed here, so that you as an outreach worker will know what the client will face when they work with CDSS about their application. And then the question is, based on this regulation, what do you as an outreach person need to do? If there is something you'll need to do differently from what you would do with other applicants, you will find it described here. So let me ask a question. Does it change, if a person is homeless, does it change how you work with a client doing outreach? If you think it does, then raise your hand. Okay. Well, in fact, it doesn't. It does for the CDSS eligibility worker. There are things that they have to look at more closely. But it really doesn't change what you as an outreach worker have to do. But you will need to be aware that follow-up will be more difficult, particularly if the client does not have a fixed abode and does not have a phone. The regulation quick reference sheets will give you what you need to know about inter-county transfers, people with a felony conviction, people who are homeless, people with immigrant, refugee, or asylee status, students, unique household compositions, Social Security benefits. And again, once you read through them a few times, talk to your colleagues about them, chat back and forth, you'll become very familiar with the regulations for the areas that really impact you as an outreach worker the most. The next slide is kind of a fun slide, and I'll give you a hint. Everything on this slide will be found under the Consumer Flyer tab. You have thumbnail pictures of the consumer flyers in your Toolkit binder, but the full copy is in your carry case. So here we have a lady with a watermelon, a gentleman with some carrots, an older lady with a big smile, and a girl with what looks like an orange or a grapefruit. Raise your hand if you find any of these folks on the consumer flyers. The girl with the watermelon is on the student flyer. The guy with the carrots is on the older adults flyer. The older lady putting healthy food is on her table. And the girl with the orange, or grapefruit, I think it's an orange, is on the refugee and asylee consumer flyers. So the consumer flyers are a big deal, and as somebody asked earlier, do we have these materials in Spanish? For the consumer-facing flyers, we do. They're English on one side and Spanish on the other. Getting through the process of CalFresh application is challenging for the applicant. Even the thought of applying can make people anxious. We understand that the rules can be tough. The consumer flyers were written as grab-and-go pieces that you could make available to the general public when you attend an event. They can also be used during a pre-screening or an application assist encounter where you would read through it with the client and get a better understanding. They're printed in English, as I said, on one side and Spanish on the other. And these, again, were topics selected because they come up most frequently for an outreach worker in the community. There are many, many other topics we could have chosen, but we chose the topics that are most widely needed. Take a moment to review them, and you'll notice that they are targeted to specific groups like older adults, people with disabilities, people without a home, people worried about immigration and public charge, or people with refugee or asylee status. They are geared to the consumer, but they are by no means simple. No matter how hard we work, it is difficult to simplify regulations to the reading level recommended by advertising. So while we call them flyers, we've kind of under-described them because they are more like pamphlets on a single page. And for the older adults, we have one flyer that talks about putting healthy food on your table with CalFresh, and it's in both English and in Spanish. So now I'm getting to the part that a lot of people do not like. And so let me ask for a show of hands. How many of you like to track your activity? Some people do, but most people don't. Because you are on the front line for outreach, you know exactly what is going on. You know who you spoke to, what you completed, and how much effort you put into your work. The only way to communicate what's happening to your supervisors and to funders is to document your activity. Avoid memory lapses. They occur if the information is not documented as it happens. It is very difficult to recreate a full day's work a week later, and in some cases we might even try to recreate a whole week's work. And the result of that is that most of your important work may go unreported. And that's a tragedy. A line I like to use when really emphasizing the importance of documentation is the reality that rumors are not funded. Activity does have to be tracked. The toolkit includes 9 topic-specific worksheets, and I'll go into a little more detail later on in the presentation, to allow you to readily document your activity as it takes place. These worksheets are provided on tear pads for easy use. As you examine these forms, you'll find that there's plenty of opportunity to be thorough. Using dates is encouraged as much as possible when you use these forms, but if you say use the same one form only per day, then enter the date only once. Talk to your administration about how best to integrate the data on these worksheets into your reporting. Using the exact forms that we've provided may not work in your agency, but do make sure that whatever form you choose has the necessary information. And remember that we did provide lots of blank forms to allow you to try these out at no cost to you. And if you try them out, you'll be in a better position to modify them. But none of these were designed from scratch. They were all provided in some version or other by our experienced advisory committee. Let's take a quick look at the CalFresh pre-screening. When you complete a pre-screening, you might use, and I say might, the CalFresh Outreach Pre-Screening Form, which is Worksheet E. You might also use the Applicant Authorization for Release or Exchange of Information, which is Worksheet G. And then we recommend highly that every outreach worker have a list of other local resources available. Because very often when somebody is coming to apply for CalFresh, they may have other needs associated with their financial situation, including housing and shelter and clothing. And it's a really good idea if the outreach worker can have that information available to provide to the client and then move back into the important aspect of CalFresh pre-screening, which is what you can help them with. So these three together can make up a pre-screening. The next leg of our stool, if you like, is the Application Assist Worksheets. Application Assistance is the next step in our process, and again, you'll see the other local resources are here, the authorization for exchange of information is here, and then if you look at Worksheet D, you'll see an application submission checklist, which is really a set of points that we really should have completed when helping somebody with an application. By using the checklist, you'll know what's missing, and you'll also know when it is complete. What we did not include in the toolkit is the application forms themselves, because they are available for download at the CDSS website, they're available at the CDSS offices, and they're not necessary when somebody does an online application. Many of you will know that the application form is in process of change, and so all of the information in the General Market Handbooks on pages 40 and 41 will be for general use, but the forms described are slowly being phased out if they haven't been phased out already. But the information, the regulations have not changed, so you'll find each of these pieces on the current forms in the new form. The third leg of our outreach tool is the applicant follow-up. And again, we would like you to have the other local resources available when you follow up with the client. The release of the authorization to release information you should have had already, or you can recomplete it. And then an outreach updated report checklist. So this is Worksheet F. So when you help somebody to update their information, we have a checklist that should help with that. You again will see that we didn't include the CDSS change reporting form, semi-annual reporting, or annual recertification forms, because we want you to get those from the most reliable source and have the most recent version of same. So when you have those three sets of information, now you're ready to take care of your contract. And the one form that is mandatory is the Outreach Scope of Work Tracking Form. If you complete the other forms that I've described, they feed very nicely into this Outreach Tracking Form. We haven't provided call logs, sign-in sheets for forums and meetings, because often you're doing that in partnership with other people, and you will have standard forms that you're already using. But we did include the Outreach Activity Log, and we did include the Materials Distribution Log. So the Outreach Activity Log is Worksheet A, and the Materials Distribution Log is Worksheet B. And again, in your toolkit binder, you have thumbnails of these, but in your carry case and your additional materials, you have some tear pads. Some agencies can set these up on Excel, and once the information is entered, a summary can be generated. But many people are not doing that, and so having the hard copies available will help. My advice is never end the day without documenting your activity. It is exponentially better to do it at the time than wait until later. I'm going to stop for a moment and take any questions that might have come in.
Hi Maria, looks like we do not have any questions at the moment. There was a little bit of an issue with the audio, but I think it's isolated with just a few of the attendees. I would like to remind everyone that we are also listening in to this webinar and we are able to hear Maria loud and clear. So two suggestions I would make is to check the headset that you're using, and if it continues, I would recommend calling in through the webinar conference call line, and that will hopefully fix the issue. And that is all, Maria.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry that people are having that problem. That's really unfortunate. So there are no other questions, and in which case I'll just continue to move on. The video. You know, I think we have some justifiable pride in the video. Raise your hand if you've seen it already. Cool. Lots of people like it, and it has won an International Videographer's Award. check out the CalFresh Outreach website for full details. The video was filmed throughout California. It is almost 30 minutes long, and it features real outreach workers and real consumers being educated about and assisted with the CalFresh program. It covers eligibility basics and pre-screening, application needs for special populations such as seniors, disabled, underemployed, and homeless, and it explains confidentiality, compassionate interviewing, myth and facts, and the importance of follow-up, all of the things that also appear in the handbook. There are a series of shorter clips that we're calling video appendices that we will be making available pretty soon, I think, on the internet. These enlarge on some of the important outreach topics like application assistance, verifications, and expedited service and follow-up. And you'll notice that the stars in our Prime video also starred in our video appendices. So the next question I have is, do we have to use it? Misinformation is detrimental to clients and to the community, and there is a tremendous amount of misinformation floating around about CalFresh. As a CalFresh outreach team, we are expected to know what we're talking about. No, you do not have to use it, but you do need to know the information that it contains. Not every word, but the concepts and the approved contents are very important. We want to have a uniform outreach approach throughout the state because consistency will strengthen our effectiveness, and we hope you will find this to be a one-stop shop. So I have a question for you. How will this help? What are some ways you could use this, in the next month? I'm going to take a moment and ask you to type your suggestions in the question box and then hit send. How will this help you? What value does it have for you right now? Good. I'm hoping that we got some comments. Tony, can you share if we did?
Hi, Maria. Let's see. It looks like we're having a couple of comments. The first one is to train new staff.
Good.
Next one is it is wonderful to have all the material handy in one place. Then I don't have to spend time looking for flyers, form, etc. Using our existing outreach events with sequestration of federal funds on the forefront, we'll be presenting an area aging network. And also just guidelines for keeping up with.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
The last one was just guidelines for keeping up with CalFresh.
Exactly, and that's really what we're hoping this will do. This is sort of the one-stop shop, and we know, and I'll get to that in just a minute, that some things do change. But our hope is that the toolkit can support everyone to do an important job even better by having consistent information and messaging available. That it can bring new CalFresh outreach staff up to speed quickly. And just because it's all in a binder doesn't mean that it's very easily digested. I think it needs to be shared and discussed among yourselves in your agency. And it can also keep existing staff current or updated on the program. We'd like you to approach the toolkit as a workshop with written and audiovisual components. We'd like you to flip through the handbook, read it in sections, mark it up with your personal reminders. This is not to be protected. You need to use it. And then the video, we'd like you to watch it in one sitting and then play it back for clarification of particular sections. It can be stopped and started to allow discussion at various points throughout. And that's also true for the appendices. Excuse me. And of course, the question is content changes. Even while we were developing the toolkit, things were in motion. And there are changes that occurred, and we tried to write the toolkit in a somewhat generic way to allow and accommodate for these changes. For example, the new application form, the semi-annual reporting. We built those things into our worksheets. So the toolkit contents will change when a regulation or form changes, when the interpretations of a regulation change, when CDSS requests and is granted a waiver from USDA, that could change a regulation. And of course, the annual change is the cost of the cost of living adjustment. You'll notice in your toolkit and on the electronic version you have active links, and you can check or pull up the source document to get the most recent cost of living adjustments, and they will be posted on the CDSS website as well. Any of the forms that have the current dollar amounts of awards and requirements, you can use and just attach a new insert that has the new information. So before I close, I'd like to, on behalf of the California Department of Social Services and the California Department of Public Health, express great appreciation for the dedicated work of the following advisors who contributed not just a little bit of time, but a lot of time and a tremendous amount of expertise and materials to this toolkit. This toolkit truly belongs to the people who worked hard to put it together. And I may or we may have missed one or two, but I can tell you that everybody on this list committed substantial time and effort, and it was on a volunteer basis to bring this to print. And you'll notice that we had really a cross-section and collaboration that I think might be state-of-the-art. CDSS and CDPH gratefully acknowledge the California Association of Food Banks for providing their guide to food stamps, which was the jumping-off point for our handbooks. Legal Services of California for their permission to use material directly from the California Guide to Food Benefits. The California Department of Aging for working tirelessly with us on some of the materials that would be suitable for older adults. The United States Department of Health and Human Services, and we used a lot of public domain material. The United States Department of Agriculture, Food and Nutrition Services. Runyon, Salzman, and Einhorn, under contract with CDPH, completed the design, the copy edits, the layout, and the production of the very pleasing package you have. And Digital Workshop, under contract with RS&E, completed the video production. So we have time for a few questions if there are any.
Hi Maria, it looks like we don't have any questions through the question box, but we did get a lot of great comments about how to use the toolkit in the next month. So we'll be able to see that in the reports later today.
Okay, wonderful.
And also at this time, I'd like to open it up for any live questions that the attendees would like to ask. If you can please use your hand function if you have a question, and I'll go ahead and click on your name, unmute you, and have you ask your question. Please remember that in order to ask a question, you must be connected with a USB microphone or by telephone. Please raise your hand if you have a question. Okay, it looks like we have one question. Miguel Perez, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you and you can ask your question. Go ahead, Miguel. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you now, Miguel. I guess your hand's up from a little bit earlier. Well, it looks like we don't have any questions at the moment, so I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you, Maria.
Okay, very good. So our next steps will be more webinars, and we really like this medium for sharing information with a lot of people, and using the raising hands and the opening mics can make it much more interactive. We will be gathering information for periodic updates. We will also evaluate the toolkit and make enhancements over time. So please give us your feedback. Did we get this toolkit introduction right? Please complete the survey that Tony will post shortly. We'd like to thank you very much for your attention today and point you to the CalFresh Toolkit website, it's not the Toolkit website. The Toolkit can be found on the CDSS CalFresh Outreach website. That's www.cdss.ca.gov/CalFresh Outreach/. Thank you very much.
This concludes our webinar for today. I would like to thank Maria, Tony, and Detta for conducting this webinar. Please complete the short evaluation survey after you log off today. Your feedback is very important to us in improving our webinar process. Thank you very much for attending today's webinar. We appreciate your time and have a great day.